In the Old Testament of the Hebrew Bible, there is a story. And the story goes like this. There was a king named Nimrod, and one day he decided to gather all the people on earth and build a tower. Now, all the people on earth at that time spoke a single language. So everybody got together and everybody discussed how to build a tower. And they said they'll build the highest tower that will go all the way up to the gate of God. Now, the gate of God is a phrase from which the name Babel comes. And so this tower was called the Tower of Babel. It's also from the name from where the city of Babylon gets its name. Now, upon seeing this, God said, all of these people speak the same language. If this goes on, they will be able to do anything. So God comes down to earth and he says, let me confuse all of them. Let me scatter them across the world and let them all speak different languages so that they are all scattered and all confused and they will not be able to build this tower. And so God did that, and the tower remained unbuilt, and King Nimrod was disappointed. Now, there's several ways to look at this story. And I think one way is that, okay, this is the origin story that the Bible tells us about how languages were formed and how people migrated across continents. Another way to look at this story is to say that perhaps this is God's way of punishing the arrogant. This is God's way of punishing hubris, and that maybe humility is what the story is about. But I think it's a very simplistic reading. Because why would the author say that, this God is threatened by mere mortals? I mean, we're humans, right? So this author is saying that God comes down to earth threatened by mere mortals. And that, to me, is a very simplistic reading. So today, as we go through this talk, I want you to connect some dots with me. And I will go through several incidences and several phenomena across the world. And let's see what we come up with. And then we'll return back to the story and try and figure out maybe there's a different lesson. You see, when God says one way is efficient, you start building a tower and you're able to achieve that goal. When everybody speaks the same language, when there's only one king and everybody's in one country, life is good, everything is efficient, people do things. When you have many ways, however, things can go a little haywire. Some people reach the goal directly. Some people reach it through various other means. Some people don't reach anywhere at all. And there are many ways to achieve the truth. There are many ways to achieve a project. There are many ways to reach a goal. So it's not so simple. And today we live in a world where there are many ways. There are many cultures. Today we live in a world where there are many languages. And there are many kinds of people. There are people who don't look like us. There are people who don't speak like us. There are people who don't think like us. So how do we get along is the question. So let's look at what really diversity is, because this is an issue about diversity. But let's use a different word for diversity. Let's look at diversity as difference. Now, when we look at diversity as difference, suddenly everything is very different, isn't it? Because difference means perhaps disagreement. And when there's disagreement, we don't like it. So when you have diversity, you will have difference. When you have difference, you will have disagreement. But we like people who are agreeable, right? So I did a search for, I went on Google and I did a search for diversity at Harvard. And I wanted to see how they look at diversity. And this is a picture I got. You've got lovely, beautiful people smiling. And you can check the boxes of all the various skin colors and genders. Perhaps there are sexual orientations as well, which we can't see. So there is something really more that's operating in this phenomena of diversity, and that is what we will explore. Diversity is differences. But we are always told, don't stick out like a sore thumb, right? When you stick out like a sore thumb, you are at fault. Blend in. You know, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. This is a very popular Japanese proverb. So don't stick out, they say. So you want to celebrate diversity, but at the same time, you don't want to be different. Because you know, diversity is about being different. Fundamental to diversity is the essence of freedom. And as Isaiah Berlin says, the fundamental essence of freedom is freedom from the enslavement of others, the freedom to be who you are, which is the opposite of control, which is the opposite of blending in, which is the opposite of being one of the many nails that doesn't stick out. So there are two ways in which most people have dealt with diversity. One is like, let's go back to the Harvard kind of diversity, you know, where everybody's smiling and everybody's pretty and nobody challenges your views and we all get along. You know, you must have heard, don't talk about religion and politics at the dinner table. Why? Because those are very hot button issues. Everybody disagrees around that. So let's just be calm and let's talk about, you know, what food you eat in Nepal. Oh, that's lovely. How diverse. And then there's another way of dealing with diversity, the one that comes with anger, that one that comes with rage and rejection. You know, that says, oh, you are so weird. Oh, that's not diverse, that's dirty. You know, so you have these two responses, where one you attack, and the other one you just ignore. And so both sides are always attacking each other. One always attacks the other of phobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, all kinds of phobias and racism and all these labels. And then the other side wants to build walls, right? Because you're attacking me, so I'm going to build walls. We've heard who builds walls? Yes? So really, fundamentally, what we fear is that the other person is an individual who is free and different from us. And because they're different from us, they will disagree with us. And because they'll disagree with us, we must control them. Because that is what we fundamentally want to do. We either control them and dominate them and command them, or we ignore and we move on and we build walls. These are typically the responses we've given to diversity. And so we pass laws. For instance, we pass laws about what books you can read, what movies you can watch, what food you can eat, who can you have sex with, who can you marry. I will decide for you. Why? Because what you want to do is dirty. Because what you choose is wrong, and I know better. So are we dealing with diversity? Are we dealing with differences? So now recently in the United States, there has been this huge conversation happening about police brutality, okay? And I want to take you through it. In April this year, Walter Scott, this gentleman over here, was stopped by a police officer for a broken tail light in his car. That episode ended up with him being dead. Okay? Samuel DuBose was stopped by police officers in the US for missing license plates to his car. He ended up being dead. Sandra Bland did not use a turn signal when she was crossing lanes. She dead. Philando Castile pulled over again for a broken tail light. That episode also ended up with him being dead. So, okay, there's this certain conversation around the United States now about these issues. Racism, sure. Police brutality, sure. There may be multiplicity of factors. But I think there is one undeniable fact that is evident through all of these incidences. All of them are today dead for some seemingly petty offenses. Wouldn't you agree? A broken taillight leads to you being dead. We have passed so many laws to control the other that now we are regulating their very lives to the point of death. And this is what is a consequence of not understanding what diversity is. You know, whatever may be the case, our desire to control the other is so intense that sometimes the consequences can be lethal. Now, this happens in India also. Let's not just assume that this is a problem of the United States. The thing about India is, when we get pulled over for a broken taillight or crossing a lane, we can have some good-humored negotiation that is mutually beneficial, right? And that's not because, the laws don't exist here. The laws here exist as well. Even we love to control each other, okay? So let's just accept these truths about ourselves. The reason we don't die when we get pulled over for crossing lanes is because our enforcement machinery is just not that robust, okay? Our state, the law enforcement machinery, is just not as robust as it is in the United States. But what it shows is that the laws are universal. Our desire to control the other is universal. Freedom is good for us, not for you, okay? So now in recent times, I've been wondering about diversity, and so I attended a diversity workshop. And there, I was confronted with, white male privilege as something that, people take for granted. So I asked myself, okay, well, I'm brown, I'm not white. I'm male, yes, but I'm not a heterosexual male. So does that still give me privilege? I don't know. The analysis of diversity in the West and the way they talk about it is about what I can see, the skin color, what biology you have, what physiology you have. So when Harvard says that 2018, their class of 2018 is the most diverse they've had in their history, they're talking about what they can see. The skin color, the body, the biology. And sometimes if they're really, really progressive, then it is about, transgender. It's like, oh, this is a trans person who is male to female, and now we have, this person on our rolls. And so we are a diverse college. And this is not to attack any one institution or point out any fault in Harvard as such. It's just to note a phenomena. Now, is there another way to approach diversity? Okay, and I go back to my Google search. And this time, I search for Indian people. Just type Indian people, and you get this. I don't even have to use the word diverse here. I get this. I get a sadhu, and I get children, and I get women, and I get all of these colors. And then I realize that what the West is struggling with today, we have been dealing with for millennia. Right? We have been living with different races, different people, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different religious points of views for millennia. And somehow we have survived. We've not just survived, we've actually thrived. 1.2 billion people is an indication of thriving societies, right? What is it? What is the secret around over here? You see, the West is now having to deal with diversity a lot more because social media has entered our lives in an unprecedented way. Now, the inconvenient other is at your fingertips. They're on your Facebook timeline. And when you post a status update, they want to disagree. And they say, no, but my view is this. Twitter. You must have heard of Twitter trolls and Twitter wars and Twitter battles. That is what's happening. And suddenly, social media has brought the inconvenient other into their spaces. And now more recent geopolitical events have brought the real people physically into your borders. And they are struggling with how to deal with this. So I want to look at the contrast between the two images. This is what they sell you as diversity. This is what we are, just as people. The inconvenient other at your fingertips, on your timeline on Facebook, on your Twitter, in your face, and now at your borders. So what is it about Indians? Yeah, we've heard about being intolerant, the hashtag intolerant debate. And I think Shashi Tharoor makes a good point about it. We Indians love to disagree, and somehow we've allowed disagreement to continue. And I think that is the secret, and that's one of the many secrets. But what does it show? What does it imply? We love to disagree with each other. In fact, I'm sure there's somebody sitting here in the audience right now disagreeing with me, very smugly and very self-righteously, and that's perfectly fine. But here's the thing, we allow for that disagreement to happen. But there's something beyond that. What does disagreement imply? There's a deep comfort with the other being weird. There's a deep comfort with the other doing other things on their own. And that is shown through our history, our mythologies, our religions. And as Devdutt Patnaik, a very renowned mythologist, points out, this liberalism courses through our philosophy. It courses through everything in our history. For instance, the Rig Veda goes up to 4,000 years ago. And it says a metaphysical fact about nature is diversity. Vikruti evam prakriti. The different is also nature. This is an insight that comes from the history of our civilization. The liberalism of Shiva, as he enters into a queer space as Ardhanareshwara. This is liberalism that courses into our subconsciousness. This is the image of Krishna, worshipped as the complete man, but very comfortable in his femininity. Notice his plaited hair and his very comfortable feminine pose. There's nothing problematic about this. And this is the image of a complete man. And so I want you to consider what we are talking about in terms of diversity. At the root of diversity is understanding that the other is inconvenient and we have to let them be. At the root of diversity is this idea that people who do not look like us, do not talk like us, do not speak like us, are also free, independent, individual, autonomous human beings that have to be respected. And so when they come to our doors and when they enter our borders, how do we negotiate with them? Do we negotiate with them by saying that you have to assimilate, remove your differences, remove your diversity, become one of us? Or do we say that let's dialogue, let's figure out what happens? Because you see, I want to go back to the Tower of Babel, and I want to now figure out what is the lesson there. When God says that let's confuse these people and scatter them across the earth, is this a lesson about humility and being against hubris, or is it an indication of liberty and emancipation? Is God saying that it is better to be different and diverse and deal with the messiness of diversity because that is the price you pay for your freedom? Or do you want to be on the road to serfdom as one people under one king, all efficient but slaves? And that is a lesson of the Tower of Babel. Thank you.